Well, this going?
Yeah.
All right, good. Well, Jeff, appreciate you taking time out of your day to come join us. The Asian American Group's been in existence for about 22 years, Mike?
About 20.
About 20 years. Mike's the president of our organization. We've been doing interviews for state assembly, state senate, and other races for about the past 6 years in conjunction with our endorsement process. We did invite Mr. White as well. He did not respond. However, for all candidates, we are having a makeup day on Thursday of this week to give them another opportunity. We intend on getting the endorsements out on Friday, since we know that obviously early voting begins next Saturday. In addition to informing the candidates of our endorsements, we also get newspaper space donated to us in various Asian periodicals, and we'll print out essentially what's like almost like a slate card for all the individuals we're endorsing. We also have thousands and thousands of people on our collective email lists, and we'll be blasting that out to them as well to encourage people to get out and vote. If it's a primary, it's an off election year, not a lot of sexy races to get people to the polls. So we're doing our best to try and encourage people to participate in the process, not only in the general, which is much easier, but also in the important primary races like yours. So that having been said, what caused you to run for this particular race at this particular time?
Well, the simple answer is that I'm the 2014 Nevada Teacher of the Year this year. And having won that prize, that honor, to represent teachers across our state, gave me a certain platform, a certain visibility, if you will. Along with that great responsibility that I felt as the Teacher of the Year to do something positive for the community. And I think it would be no surprise to anyone in this room that education, despite the fact that many politicians will say it's the most important thing on the agenda, that doesn't really seem to be the case. And so I wanted to leverage my Teacher of the Year status into something positive for my community, and one thing led to another, and here I am.
Obviously, I mean, we've been doing this for a day and a half now. So I already know many of the questions that everyone's going to ask, and they know the questions I'm going to ask. Obviously, education is important not only to yourself, but to many of us. From more of a short-term perspective, assuming you are elected, what changes do you think can be made to improve our national standing, which is hovering somewhere around 49.5
I was going to say
days.
last.
Depending on the metric, we might be as high as 47.
Certainly. Sure. So absolutely. I mean, this is, you're right. I mean, I think most candidates want to see education improve. I don't think there's a candidate out there who says that I want to see education get worse. But what I think I bring to the table that's unique is that teacher perspective. I think my colleagues mean well when they say that they want to improve education and they have ideas to do it. But it's kind of like me saying to a firefighter, let me tell you how to fight fighters better, or police officer, how to reduce crime better. This is my area of specialty. It's the area that I've dedicated the last 13 years. It's my professional life to doing. So what I bring to that conversation is the perspective of not only being a teacher, but being recognized as being an outstanding teacher. So the question is, how would I do that? How would I leverage that into better educational outcomes? I think that we can talk about money and funding, and I think that's certainly part of the picture. But so I also believe that accountability is also part of that big picture too. I don't think that necessarily pouring money into education budgets without having accountability, some kind of a structure in place, is the solution. However, I think that what a lot of my colleagues miss the point is in teachers. Clearly, every research study that I've ever seen and looked at, and I think just common sense and intuition tells us, you're not going to get the educational outcomes you want in this state until we can have and make sure that we have the best teachers in our classrooms. And there's a whole conversation, a national conversation going on right this very minute about how we do that. How do we attract, first of all, our most talented youth to come into this profession? So that's the first thing. How do we attract them? The second part of the equation is then how do we retain them for the long haul? To make, I will tell you from personal experience as the Teacher of the Year, teaching is not something that you can train someone to do in a year, 2 years, 3 years. I've been in the classroom for 13, and I think that probably around 10 is when I started really getting up to speed where I became a highly effective teacher. So again, the question is, how do we attract and how do we retain? And I have a lot of ideas about how to do that. I think one of them is increased responsibility. I think also leadership opportunities for teachers to, while, and this is the key, staying in the classroom. See, right now in the education profession, that if you want added responsibility, you want to have a greater reach, you want to have a greater impact in your craft, essentially you can go into administration and become a building supervisor, principal, that sort of thing. But what we've just done is taken one of our best teachers out of the classroom where they're no longer teaching kids and putting them in an administrative duty. Now look, we need administrators, obviously. They need to do budgets and we need to do discipline and all the other things that administrators do. But what administrators don't do, and they don't have time to do, is to teach and to mentor. And that's what I think that great teachers want to do. We want to have that opportunity to share with others what we've learned through the years in the classroom, the do's and the don'ts, what went right, what went wrong. And that's actually what I do right now. I'm an adjunct teacher at Nevada State College. I teach a social studies methods course there. So I'm doing the best that I can within the structure that I currently have. But that's one of the reasons why I'm running. So I can change that structure, so that I can have a seat at the table and say, look, we want great teachers, this is what we need to do. And that's, I think, first and foremost, I mean, look, we can raise standards, we can punish teachers, we can do all sorts of other kind of punitive carrot stick tactics, but I think clearly teaching needs to become regain that honor as an honor profession, one that I believe that it is, and that's what I'm working to do.
What's your stance on vouchers?
To private schools, I think that when you have a school system right now that's underfunded, taking money out of that system and putting it into the private sector, I can't agree with vouchers. Now, I agree with choice. I teach at a magnet school. I'm at the Northwest Career and Technical Academy. That's a school of choice. Kids have to apply to come to my school. And I get some great kids. They're motivated, they love to learn, and I like to say it's easy to teach them. And it is. But that's a school of choice. So I would be disingenuous to say that I didn't believe in choice, but I don't believe in taking those public dollars and putting them in private institutions.
Go ahead, Kevin. Slip your mind? Okay. Not a problem. We're giving you all these softballs. You got it? Okay, good.
As a teacher, it is our teachers in our public school really underpaid?
I don't think that they're underpaid. I think that, once you have gotten past what I call the lean years, the first 5 or so years, you gotta, just like any other profession, you have to have a college degree to do this work, you have to have the licensure. And so a lot of kids now, and we all know about skyrocketing education costs. Unfortunately, a lot of new teachers will come into the profession with a lot of debt. So when you think about other professions that you can go into that require the college degree, comparatively speaking, it's tough for teachers to do it. I think that once you've been in the profession for as long as I have, the 10, start going on to 15 years, look, I don't think there's any teacher in the classroom who would look you in the eye and say, I came into this profession, I wanted to be a teacher to get rich. There's none. Or I came into this profession to become powerful. That's not going to happen either. Maybe if they went into the administration track, that would be different. Rise up to superintendent, that's very powerful. But classroom teachers like myself, it's not about money, it's not about power. It's about kids, it's about doing something. I personally feel like great teachers think of themselves as doing something for almost a social justice. That we're taking kids, and for many of them, and this is probably not news to you, that a lot of broken families and disadvantaged situations, that we try to lift those kids up and to show them that there are greater possibilities than what may be what they were born into. Getting back to your question, no, I don't think so. I certainly would not run on this notion that teachers are woefully underpaid. Compared, look, my wife works in law. I've had the opportunity to run into a lot of lawyers.
My condolences.
I try not, there's some good ones. But I try not to get too involved in those conversations in terms of what other professionals make, because sometimes it can become very depressing. I have 2 master's degrees. One of them is in curriculum instruction, the other one is in American history. So I wanted to make sure. I knew that I was going to be a leader in my classroom, and I wanted to be a leader across the board, not necessarily as a building principal, mind you, but as a teacher leader. And that's kind of what I was alluding to a little bit earlier. And as a teacher leader, I wanted to be very clear that not only am I great or competent as an educator, that what we call pedagogy, teaching, but also a master of my content area. And so I set out to do graduate study in both content, U.S. history, and then also in curriculum and instruction, and I'm also national board certified. So there'd be no misunderstanding that this man who is talking to us about teaching and leading and all this other stuff is, not only is he talking the talk, but he's walking the walk. It's how I live my life. And so when you look at other professionals with comparative education attainment, a couple of master's degrees, and you start playing the comparison game, it can become very disillusioning. So I don't do that. I just prefer just to kind of say, well, you know what, Jeff, you came into this profession under the pretense, as I mentioned before, that you're not going to get rich, and nor, I'm comfortable, and my family is happy, and we're safe, and we have a nice home to live in. It's not a mansion, but it's comfortable, and I think that's what teachers want. I think more than money, though, because inherently that's what it kind of turns into. Like, you'll see the arguments or the debates in the newspaper, and it's the greedy teachers union versus, the state budget. That's usually how the conversation goes. But I think that if you talk to most good teachers, it's not about money, and that's part of it. I would be disingenuous to say that, I'm going to give up my annual salary and live in a box because I love what I do. But I would say that again, this is part of where I said to attract and retain the great teachers, that more importantly than the dollar figures is recognition for a job well done, but also having that seat at the table to say your opinion, your experience matters. And we're going to give you an opportunity to share that into the community. I love it because sometimes we'll scratch our head going, gee, how do we improve education? Well, did anyone stop to think maybe we should ask a good teacher what their point of view is? We're so quick to ask superintendents and legislators and people who are so far removed from the classroom, or haven't been in the classroom for 10, 15, 20 years, but let's stop and ask a teacher. So I think they want that respect. And I think they want to say, hey, what I do matters, and my opinions matter, and my experiences matter. And I think that in kind of the big picture, and the studies pan this out, that's more important than dollars.
One more thing is, to our young, do you know of if that we have any kind of more ethical education in school in place right now?
That's a great question.
And do you think that you would be back that up or advocating that?
Yes, certainly. So what you're talking about, I think, obliquely, is character education. Right from wrong. But I think there's also more to character than just kind of ethics and morals. There's things like perseverance, persistence, hard work, and also making the right choices. And that's something that actually I've been speaking to as a teacher of the year. I've had the opportunity to speak to the Nevada PTA. I spoke to a couple of different large organizations. And one of the things that I've talked about in terms of my ability to become the Nevada Teacher of the Year was this idea of passion, persistence, sweat equity, hard work. Is it part of the curriculum now? No, but that's something that I brought into my classroom. Again, over the years discovered or found that for me, leading by example is the most effective way. I can't tell a student to live a moral life or to go out and vote, or I teach U.S. history, to become civically active unless I do it first. So in a sense, that is one of the reasons why I'm here before you today, because I'm not only talking the talk, but I'm walking the walk. I've been telling kids for 13 years, become civically competent. At the very least, pay your taxes and vote. But if you can do more, then do more. Well, I had the opportunity to do more. And I didn't want to but I wanted to set the right tone or the right example. And so that's kind of how I live my life. And my kids see that in the way that I do things, in the sense of the way that I take my job professionally, the way that I dress, the way that I carry myself, that this is a profession, that I value education extremely. And that plays out in everything that I do. I don't know if I answered your question or not adequately enough, but I certainly think that that should be part of it. Because unfortunately there are some students, many students, who come up in homes where those conversations don't take place, where morality, right and wrong, hard work, fruits of your labor, that sort of thing, isn't really an example. There are no examples at home. So, yeah, I agree.
So especially that in this town, that is so much entertainment. The little ones, which is much easier to teach, to train the grade school, the kindergartner.
Right.
That's so much easier to teach and set a base foundation rather than the high school, junior high school kid.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, that's very difficult to teach. We have that one of the highest dropout rate. Am I correct? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that really goes back, though, to my initial assertion that if you attract and retain our best teachers, now, best teachers doesn't always mean, in every case, best role model, but I think there's a strong correlation. Someone who works real hard, someone who's smart, someone who wants to do right for the community is going to bring that element into the classroom versus someone who isn't, who sees teaching as, hey, I got summers off.
Are we doing that from UNLV? No, is UNLV, is there much teacher graduated from there?
Yeah,
it's probably the best bet. I mean, they have immune to the system already, rather than someone come out of nowhere and from other city,
sure,
come in here and then they go, wow, so much fun, forget again.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a perennial situation. What I mean by that is that before the Great Recession, 2006, around there, I mean, our economy was booming. I remember they were bringing teachers from all over the Midwest, the East Coast, and even different countries, because they just couldn't get enough teachers to fill the classrooms. The recession hit 2008, and then it was kind of a hiring freeze. In fact, there were if you remember, contract negotiations and threats of pink slips and whatnot. Well, here we are going back into a positive economic cycle, which I'm glad, I'm sure we all are. But we're going to still face the same problem. I think they said something like 2,500 new students next year is projected, and those numbers, as you know, can be skewed in the way that they count the kids, and there's probably a lot more than that. So here we are going back into that same situation where we don't have enough classrooms and we don't have enough qualified teachers. So what that means is that we're going to go back to, see, there was this time period where Nevada, I called it the teachers' training ground for the nation. Meaning that teachers who come from very competitive school districts like Michigan, or my wife is from Buffalo, New York, up there's a lot of teachers' colleges, they put out a lot of good teachers, can't get jobs. So the Clark County School District sends out recruiters, hey, come out, teach in Las Vegas, we have no income tax, low property tax, all that other stuff. And they'll come out, and generally, and I know this personally, I've had many friends do this, where they've come out from other places, Michigan's a big state, and they'll do 2, 3, 4 years in the Clark County School District, they'll get the experience, they'll apply back to their home states, they'll get a job, and they're gone. Problem with that is no doubt that many of those teachers care about kids. But there's not that same sense of community. I'm running for Assembly District 4, a community that I've lived in for the last 14, 15 years. My kids go, I have 3 daughters, they go to the local elementary school in Assembly District 4. I teach in a high school in Assembly District 4. This is my community, these are my kids. I see them, I knock on doors every day. In fact, when I'm done with this interview, we go change over and we start knocking on doors again. And every day, I mean literally every day, I run into somebody whose child went to Northwest, wants to go to Northwest, or will be going to Northwest. It's a very important kind of cultural institution in the neighborhood. I feel a tremendous responsibility for that. I do. Those teachers from Michigan, bless their hearts, they're here, they're helping us and all that other stuff. But I just don't think they have the same investment. And I think that's a problem.
Jeff,
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm going on
sorry.
education. I'll go for it.
Well, and many of us are passionate about education.
Yeah.
We're kind of coming up against our allotted time amounts, but I guess one bigger question is this. Obviously, you know, education is your passion, and you're very, very knowledgeable in that field, but there are numerous other areas you're going to encounter where you are completely ignorant. I'm completely ignorant of how to be a good teacher.
Right.
You would be completely ignorant of of mining regulations.
Absolutely.
And admittedly so. You know, we have people here on the dais who are very heavily invested in the group homes and elderly care facilities and things of that nature. And they have certain specific questions that they're addressing to many candidates like yourself. But what assurances can you give to, you know, assuming you're elected, to maintain an open door policy to allow individuals, either your constituents or just other Nevadans, to contact you when important bills to their area of expertise come up?
Well, I'll be honest with you to answer that question. Yeah. So I found in the very little time that I've been involved in politics that teaching, being a teacher, has been probably the best preparation for this political adventure that I'm engaged in. Why? Well, because in the classroom, as a classroom teacher, I have a variety of stakeholders that I have to be accountable to. Parents, students, administrators, community members, universities, student teachers, and it goes on and on and on. And so, as a classroom teacher, a good classroom teacher, I have to be able to have that open door policy and to be able to sit down with people from different backgrounds who have different interests and to be able to communicate effectively with them. And that's another part of that is the communication. And so I've been practicing this, if you will, for the last 13 years. So as a teacher first, assemblyman, hopefully much second. I am a teacher first, that's who I am. But I think it's those qualities of being able to sit down, having that open door with students of a variety of backgrounds, interests, and all those other things. Teachers are lifelong learners. So you talk about mining taxes, you're right. I don't really know too much about mining taxes, but I do know how to learn. And I do know how to ask good questions. And as a teacher, I've been someone who's always been eager to learn new things. That's why, you know, I'm a teacher. So that's a major aspect of it. And I think that's what will make me effective. I should also point out that coming into this, you know, we have to choose a party to run on this sort of level. And the Democrat Party most aligns with the things that I believe in terms of the big issues. But I'm not an ideologue. I'm not out there on the far, far left or far, far right, you know, espousing ideology and signing pledges and this, that, and the other. I am a middle of the road, I call myself a common sense Democrat, whatever that means. So that's who I am, and I think that there are good ideas. I'm willing to listen and sit down and talk to anyone that has a good idea, regardless of their political affiliation. Quite honestly, I don't care. That's just, you know, if it's a sound policy, it makes sense, let's talk. But if we're going to get bombastic and we're going to start, you know, playing all those games that you hear about in the news, I don't want any part of that stuff. So that's how I plan on kind of negotiating and navigating through what you're talking about and dealing with different constituents, having that open door, being an effective communicator, and not taking ideological stances and drawing lines in the sand.
Fantastic. Well,